inform the court, I've informed counsel that before 5 o'clock's recess, it appears the state's intended second witness, Charles Williford, the bill collector, who's, I'm informed, been in the courthouse all day under subpoena, intends or desires to go to South Carolina tomorrow, and I think it might require the courts having a conversation with him about his subpoena and his availability to be back here tomorrow morning.
All right.
I just alert the court to that issue. I'm getting this information from Karen Scott, who coordinates things in our office about. So that's my understanding.
Okay. If we can make sure that he is available prior to recessing this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right. Anything, Mr. Arbor?
No.
All right. Very good. Let's bring jurors, please. Mr. Arbor, further questions?
Yes, thank you. That was around the time that I was going to answer a question. Mr. Wallace, do you have exhibit number 11?
I do, sir.
May I approach with you?
Yes.
Exhibit 11 was one of the two letters that was on the FEC website that were of concern to you, that caused you to send the email to Mr. Broyhill saying help, correct?
That's correct.
One of the issues that was reflected, in fact, well, there were two concerns with this document. First of all, when you were looking at it, you were looking at it on a computer screen, correct?
Yes.
Apparently, you can go on the FEC website, and if there's correspondence that's been sent out, it'll pop up there, correct?
It's listed along with the reports that are filed by the committee.
Right. The letter that's now listed as State's Exhibit 11 and in evidence, the date on that is October 1, 2012, correct?
Correct.
The presumption is that a hard copy of this was actually mailed to the Congressman Brad Miller account, correct?
To the committee's post office address, yes.
To the committee to elect Brad Miller, to his federal campaign committee's post office box.
Yes, sir.
Right. Which is the post office box that Mr. Broyhill and Ms. Hahn or whoever else for the campaign had access to, correct?
Correct.
Anybody working for the campaign committee.
Whoever had been authorized to have access to that box.
Again, not one of your functions to be in charge of who's got the key to the post office box.
Correct.
But on that date that Mr. Keating's telling you about this, and now you're looking at it for the first time online, you had not seen this letter before that.
Correct.
Now, you had heard about this thing we talked about where Mr. Miller was going to make refunds to certain contributors and ask them to donate money back. You weren't involved in it, but you had heard about it.
I don't know whether I had as of that time.
That might have been your first alerting to it?
I don't recall, but I don't know that I had any discussions with anyone about that issue before seeing that letter.
So that might have been the first you became aware of.
Could well have been.
Okay. This is like the third page of the exhibit. It's page, which some of these documents, there's a lot of discovery in this case that has been date stamped. There's like over 8,000 pages of it. So when I reference a page number in the lower right-hand corner, that may not have been something that the Federal Elections Commission put on. It's just
Certainly.
a date stamp that was prepared in preparing the discovery for this case. Okay?
Certainly.
I'm going to hand you what's date stamped is page 681 on Exhibit 11. I'm going to return my sheet if that's okay. And I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to ask the court permission to put that page up on the screen so the jury can see it. Now you can look at whatever one's easier, the copy on the screen or the one that's there.
Thank you.
And I would ask the court to ask if the jury can see it okay from where they're seated, Your Honor. I just ask the court to make an inquiry that the jurors can see it.
All right. If anybody has a problem seeing anything, just let us know by raising your hand. But go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. What this letter that you found on the website, and you're seeing it for the first time, that's your testimony, right? That's the first time you saw this thing.
Between the 15th and the 17th.
Right.
correct.
Whenever it was that Tom Keating's telling you, hey, take a look at the website, he had apparently looked at it, correct?
Correct.
You might want to, and he's basically saying, you might want to take a look at this. Something's not right, correct?
Correct.
And now you're looking at it, and now you're seeing this. This was part of the Exhibit 11, which is in evidence. It's something available to the jury if they want to look at it, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. What this showed was that there were 5 different donors. The Federal Election Commission was saying that the Brad Miller for U.S. Congress Committee had issued checks to these 5 different donors. May I stand up but toward the screen, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I don't have a laser on. I'll just use my finger if that's okay. So you have it, using Edward Bolts for an example. All right, you have it right in front of you, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. April 17th, 2012. It's almost like a year to a day prior to the time that you're finding this. He had been given a check of $4,000 from the Brad Miller campaign account, according to the records of the Federal Elections Commission, right?
Sir, that information was apparently drawn from the filed report of the committee by the Federal Election Commission.
I understand. Okay. It also showed that on April 17th of 2012, a Randolph Cloud was given a check of $4,000.
That was apparently reported by the committee, yes.
Right. That Thomas Garlitz was written a check on April 17th of $1,500, correct?
Again, apparently drawn from the reports of the committee.
Right. That an Anthony Henry or an Andy Henry had been drawn a check a little earlier than that, April 6th, in the amount of $3,400, correct?
Correct.
And that on April 17th, like the other ones, an individual by the name of David Ruffin had been written a check in the amount of $3,000, correct?
That's correct.
That these were purportedly refunds sent to these particular donors to the Brad Miller campaign account, correct? That's what the letter's purporting to say.
The letter expresses the commission's concern that the amounts 4,000, 4,000, 1,500, 3,400, and 3,000 were dispersed to the donors in amounts in excess of their contributions.
So that's my next question. What they're telling you is that on May 10th and December 31st of 2011, their records show that Edward Bolts had only made contributions to the Brad Miller campaign of $2,250. Yet he was getting a check for $4,000, which would have been $1,750 more than he purportedly had donated to the campaign, correct?
That's correct.
Similarly with this Randolph Cloud. he had gotten a refund, according to his records, of $4,000, but his donation had only been that of $2,000. So he got $2,000 more than what he had originally donated, correct? According to this record.
Yes, sir.
Thomas Garland, same thing. Gave $1,500, got $1,000 back. I'm sorry, gave $1,000 to the campaign, got $1,500 back, $500 more than what he had purportedly donated, correct? The Penry guy, $3,400 refunded, only donated $1,000, correct? And Mr. Ruffin, $3,000 refunded, $2,000 donated. Now, the Federal Election Commission is saying to you in this letter, this doesn't jive with our numbers. If they only donated this much money, you can't refund them more than what they gave. You said that yourself. That's would be a violation of the federal election law, correct?
Correct.
In essence, when you do that, a campaign committee does that, they're technically giving money that doesn't belong to them, that was contributed by other donors. You're giving, assuming this were to happen, you give somebody back more money than they donated, you're technically giving them the donations that were given by another donor. Would that be correct?
I suppose that you could make that argument. Let me just say that under the Federal Election Campaign Act, there are different limitations on disbursements from candidate committees from those which exist under North Carolina law. It may have been lawful to pay Mr. Cloud $2,000 more by check than he had contributed. But the commission expressed concern because it had been denominated as a refund. And the commission's record of the committee's reports tended to establish that his contribution total was $2,000 and that he had been refunded $2,000. And so they wrote what is denominated as a request for additional information.
If I'm understanding you correctly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, what you're saying is, let's say this, I don't know who this Mr. Cloud is, I don't care. But let's say Mr. Cloud, using his numbers, okay, because it's easy, 2 and 4,000, that's good math for me, that's easier. Let's say he did some service for the campaign. The service cost $2,000, whatever that service was. And somebody made the mistake of, well, I'll give him his $2,000 refund, and I'll pay him the $2,000 we owe him for the service he provided. Here's a check for $4,000. You might be able, you could justify that later on, but you'd still have to file an amendment and explain this was done incorrectly, because you can't refund more than what somebody gave, correct?
Correct, sir.
If that were the case, because I understand what you're saying, and you don't, and by the way, again, when you're seeing this on that date in April, you're seeing that for the first time. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
No one's alerting you to any of this. All you know is you just met with the strategists on Monday. You get a call from the former strategist saying, take a look at the website. You look at the website, and there's a letter on there that no one has brought to your attention prior to this, and it's dated back, and what's the date of that letter? It's like
October 1st, 2000.
Of 2012, and you're hearing about it for the very first. No one's told you about this.
Correct.
No one's shown you this. And, being, a lawyer, and you're trying to do this right, and you got a good reputation, your name's the one on the report, you're like, hey, what's going on? Because if you refund more money than a person actually donated, that is a violation of the federal election law, isn't it?
Well, if if you refund, that is, if you disperse more than the contribution received and denominate it as a refund, then it's inaccurately reported. And the commission did not have more knowledge than is set forth here, and therefore requested additional information from the committee. The commission did not take the position that the disbursement was per se unlawful.
Right. They're saying, look, our records reflect this. Our records reflect that at least these 5 people were given refunds. We don't have records of these 5 people having given the campaign this much money. You refunded them more money than they were entitled to. Either give us an explanation or figure out how to get the rest of the money back, because you can't refund more than what a person gives, correct?
The commission was requesting additional information because what had been denominated as refunds exceeded the contributions.
Right. This would be, and now as a treasurer who signs his name to the report, you got 2 things going on. Number one, this, which would not be appropriate to refund more money than what a person donated, right?
Correct.
And secondly, the letter's dated October and no one's told you a thing about this.
Correct.
And that would be highly improper, wouldn't it?
It was troubling to me.
Because it's your name on the report.
Correct.
Not Jonathan Broyhill, not Jamie Hahn, not even Brad Miller. It's your name on the report. You're the treasurer. You're the one who submits. You're the one who's got to answer this stuff. And I don't know how relevant it is. There's an objection, but I'll ask. This isn't typically a paid position for you, is it?
It was not a paid position.
No. When you're a treasurer, you're sort of an honorarium thing. You're sort of, it is a privilege to be the named treasurer of a U.S. congressman, but you're not getting any money for this.
No, it was volunteer service.
Right. It's your way, and it's a way of giving back to the party, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to a particular candidate.
Yes, sir.
But, you don't do this wanting to get your butt in a sling over something that you had nothing to do with, correct?
Correct.
So now you've got this thing, that in and of itself, big red flag, and the checks are indicating that they were written back in April
Of 2012.
of 2012. And B, no one's told you about it. And you just met with these 2 people on the 15th. And your testimony was that on that day, everybody seemed pretty okay. Everybody seemed pretty fine. Correct?
I don't recall testifying to that, but it was a cordial, professional meeting of the same kind that we had had over the prior 2 years.
I think that's where I got that from, because I think you said there was nothing about that meeting on the 15th that was anything out of the ordinary from the meetings in the previous ones, except for the fact that you had this on the report, what was a question for you on the 15th, the Monday when you're meeting with them, was that the report that, and you have that in front of you, I believe.
I do.
All right, that was prepared by Sky Blue Strategies, whoever, whether it was Ms. Hahn or Mr. Broyhill, indicated that there were these loans that hadn't been repaid. And you were under the understanding that the campaign is winding down. Mr. Miller is supposed to have been repaid these loans. Why? You're asking, why hasn't this been taken care of?
Sir, I believe I was told that they had been repaid, and my concern was that the report as prepared indicated that the indebtednesses were still outstanding.
Right, and I apologize, I was going to correct myself because that was your testimony. Your testimony was that you had been led to believe that all the outstanding loans, at least the ones with the federal campaign that you'd been dealing with, had been addressed and repaid to Mr. Miller. And here we are, end of the first quarter, he's been out of office for 3 months, and you're getting a report for the quarterly filing, and it's not showing that these things have been paid. So you're asking questions. What's going on? I thought this was done. Other than that, though, you said that the meetings were it wasn't confrontational.
It was not confrontational.
It was, would it be fair to say that it was sort of along the lines of, I thought we had this squared away. I thought this was paid. What's going on? Give me some, you were being sort of like the mini Federal Election Commission, except you were asking them, give me more information, explain why this isn't done.
I was requesting amendment of the draft report to conform to what I understood the facts to be, such that the report would then accurately reflect the transactions undertaken by the committee.
Right. But certainly on the 15th, you did not know about this.
I did not.
Had you known about this, the meeting might have been quite different.
We would, had I known about this earlier, we would have met earlier, because this was a significant issue to me.
This is the kind of thing, if there's a violation of the Federal Election Commission, there can be penalties attached to the campaign account. They can be held liable to pay fees and things, correct?
Well, let me be. We would have had a meeting. We would have explored the explanation for this, the existence of this issue. But this could simply have been this, and I'm referring now to Exhibit 11. This could simply have been commission error. This could simply have been some other reporting error of some sort, a mismatch on names. There are possibilities that existed. This on its face would not have led to the imposition of a penalty, but would have required exploration, would have required correction or amendment or further disclosure to the commission.
Yes, I'm not for 1 minute suggesting to you that this is they've announced this is some kind of letter that forms a decision saying this is what we've decided has happened, and therefore there is a penalty. They're doing, in this letter, they're saying we have uncovered this impropriety. Please provide us with additional information to explain so that you can go back and look and see, is this a mistake or, what happened? Basically to find out, what is this, correct?
Correct.
But on the date that you're sending out the email, and may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I see your exhibit where you sent the okay, this is Wednesday the 17th. Sent to Mr. Broyhill and Ms. Hahn. Where's the help one? Is it on here?
This is the email.
The subject.
It's in the subject
I'm
line.
sorry.
Yes.
So on April 17th, Wednesday, 4:42 in the afternoon, the subject line of the email you're sending in the subject, help, with an exclamation point.
Yes, sir.
And a very brief and to the point statement. I found the two letters attached hereto on the FEC website, exclamation point, correct?
Yes.
Basically what you're saying is, what's this? And I would imagine, as any lawyer, you're waiting to see what their response is going to be. Maybe they have a perfectly logical one. Maybe they can explain it. But at least on its face, it was something that would cause you concern. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
All right. Now, your testimony was, and and I'll ask the question again. Now, let me rephrase. At that point, on that Wednesday, you send that letter, and it's late in the afternoon, 4:42, near the end of business that day. Someone get back to me with an answer on this thing, correct? You do get a response from Mr. Broyhill, which is, I think, dated the next day, correct?
Correct.
And that's the one that says, can I approach again your?
Yes, sir.
That's the one. That says, sort of cordial, good afternoon, John. I'm working on this now. I'll be in touch first thing in the morning. All best, John. Correct?
Correct.
And that's coming to you 3:45 in the afternoon the next day.
Correct.
So Thursday afternoon, you've at least got, it's not an explanation, but it's an acknowledgement that they are, at least Mr. Broyhill. You copied Ms. Hahn on that.
I copied Ms. Hahn on my request, and he copied her on his response.
So this isn't some communication that's going on just between you and Mr. Broyhill. This is a communication that's going on between you, Mr. Broyhill, and Ms. Hahn. She's getting the email just like he's getting the email. Correct?
Correct.
And that includes the attachments, correct?
Correct.
So those letters, including the one that shows this, not just this, but also the date of that letter, October 1st, 2012, that's going to Mr. Broyhill, that's going to Ms. Hahn. They're both seeing all of this, correct?
Correct. Or at least it was transmitted to them. I don't know who opened it and reviewed it.
Now, in fact, to the best of your recollection, now you went in cooperating in this investigation. Would it be fair to say, by the way, to hear the news the following week of what had happened, what had transpired between Mr. Broyhill and Ms. Hahn was a shock to you?
Certainly.
Neither of them had demonstrated to you any kind of behaviors in your dealings with them that would suggest there was any issues, any problems. Would that be fair?
That's fair.
And as far as these issues with respect to the refunds to some of these people that were supposed to make loan repayments, I mean, this, you'd alerted them to it. They knew about it. You had taken the necessary steps. You weren't going to let it lie, correct?
I had taken only the first step at that point,
Right.
which was to raise the question.
This is sort of like the old I Love Lucy episode. Lucy, you got some explaining to do. You better come up with something and explain this to me. Because, again, your name's on the report, right?
Correct.
But your testimony was you did not hear from them ever again, correct?
I did not hear from Ms. Hahn. I did not hear from Mr. Broyhill again after my communication from Mr. Broyhill at 3:45 on Thursday afternoon.
On the Thursday afternoon. And you did send, and as we've already indicated, that went to all parties. So she was aware of it too.
It went to her.
Yeah, you can't say whether or not she read it or not, but you know it went to her.
Yes, sir.
So now Monday comes. You've not heard from them. And suddenly there's a news story of this event happening between Mr. Broyhill and Ms. Hahn and Mr. Hahn. Because it's all over the news, correct?
I'm not sure where or under what circumstances I first heard or what I first heard about the event, but I began to learn through news sources and I believe telephone calls about the events that occurred on, I believe, the 22nd.
Right. You knew about this because you're the one who pointed it out to them, correct?
Correct.
You had no knowledge whatsoever of Mr. Broyhill taking any money from the account, correct? At that point.
I did not have any knowledge at that point of Mr. Broyhill having taken any money from the committee account.
But you did know about this.
Yes, sir.
So you immediately went, after hearing about the tragedy, because the two people that would have provided you with the answers to the questions that you had posed the week before were now no longer available to you, according to at least what you were hearing. So you went and started to do your own inquiry into this, correct?
One of the first tasks was to make a visit to PNC Bank to secure the bank account. I knew, though, as well, that I might have responsibilities vis-a-vis the Federal Election Commission, both because of this page of Exhibit 11, which is on the screen, and furthermore, because of the other letter which was included in my email dated February 15, 2013, which reports that the committee's report had not been filed with the commission. Each of those two letters was an indication to me of a problem, and collectively a substantially greater problem. And then, of course, the death of Ms. Hahn. I knew at that time that I needed to secure the bank account. I knew at that time that I needed to gather records, and I knew at that time that there was a probability that I would have to make amendments of reports to the commission. And as treasurer, I had responsibility to make, or at least the option to make, what's known as a sua sponte submission to the commission, which is respond voluntarily, respond on your own.
Right.
And I undertook that responsibility and submitted through various communications with the commission an accounting of, that is, an account of what had apparently occurred, both acknowledging that the committee's reports were apparently in error, committing the committee to amend its reports, and initiating a complaint against Mr. Broyhill, which was it's part and parcel of that sua sponte submission.
Now, and just, for the sake of the juries, because I'm always reminded, don't talk like a lawyer sometimes. Sua sponte, meaning what you just said. You're gonna start to own this thing a little bit and take responsibility of it and start doing some things on your own because your name is on this thing. Would that be fair?
Right. It was, in my view, my responsibility to see that the reports were accurately filed, my responsibility to advise the commission of my belief that the reports were inaccurate, and I did so by way of the submission to the commission indicating my beliefs, committing the committee to the filing of further reports, amending previous reports.
Now, it was after then. And I have a question. Since you did not have signatory power on the account.
Correct.
Since you did not have signatory power on the account, you're not in a position, and you correct me if I'm wrong, to say close the account or freeze the account, or did you have that ability as the treasurer of the account?
From the PNC branch on Clark Avenue, and by use of email and cell phone and communications with Congressman Miller, I was able to provide the bank with Congressman Miller's expression of authority to either terminate the account
Or freeze it?
or freeze the account and or provide a request for records.
And you may not be a criminal lawyer, but you took a criminal law class somewhere along the way. You had to assume that at some point the police are going to want to come and look at these records.
Certainly.
When you went to do that, and so now you are in conversation with Congressman Miller because you need him to help get this thing frozen or at least shut down, so that, because in fairness, at this point you don't know what's going on. Would that be fair?
That's correct. I did not have access to records of the committee. I did not know what the history of those transactions was, but I had certainly concerns about the prior transactions and the reporting of those transactions.
Well, you'd never gotten a response after the 18th from, other than the one from Mr. Broyhill saying, I'm going to get back to you on it, right?
Correct.
Which he didn't, correct?
Which he did not, correct.
Right. So nobody, and Ms. Hahn didn't, correct?
Correct.
So, now you've got this, this is, nobody expected this thing to happen. Would that be fair? This thing that happened to Ms. Hahn, my client, and he's stabbing her with a knife, no one expected this, correct?
I can't speak to that, sir.
Well, were you? You
I
can
did
speak
not
to your
expect.
own feelings. Were
I
you
did not
shocked to hear this?
I was shocked to hear it. I did not expect such a thing to happen.
That's all I'm asking is about for you. You had some dealings with these people, maybe not extensive day-to-day dealings, but you knew them. You worked with them a little bit. You'd just been with them the week before. This came out of the blue at you, correct?
I certainly did not expect it to happen.
Now, and you have these concerns that never got addressed, as you said, acting on your own or sua sponte, you're doing the right thing. Go get the account frozen down, get it shut down. Let's stabilize the damage, in other words, at least for right now. And probably out of your hands anyway, because the police are going to come in and look at this thing eventually. That's when you discover that what had been reported to you the prior Monday of there being $62,000 or whatever dollars was a fabrication. There's no money in the account. Isn't that correct? Now you have an additional concern because that's the first time you're learning that, right?
I learned during ENC branch.
Right, which is
the bank
after she's backed by my client.
Yes, sir.
Prior to that, you don't know any of this. This is all because of that tragic event. You went to shut things down, and then all of a sudden you realize, I don't just have these issues anymore. There's $62,000. We got a problem here.
Correct. Correct as to the $62,000.
No,
but that the bank account was in a deficit, and the what appeared to have been fairly substantial bank balance really gone.
Right. I say 62,000 to witness, Your Honor.
Yes. I believe that's the number that I reported.
And that's my point. That's what had been released at the end of the first quarter for 2013, that there was like around $62,000 of assets available to the campaign account. And
Yes,
now
sir.
here you are a week later after been reported that. You've had these things. You haven't gotten a response. All of a sudden, the two strategists have been involved in this horrible crime. You go to the bank to shut things down, and now you find out there's not even any money in the account.
Correct.
And I want to make it, if I haven't made it abundantly clear, There's no way, any possible way, that you could have ever known this stuff. It wasn't your job description.
It was my understanding that I was entitled to and able to rely on the work product of Sky Blue, Mr. Broyhill.
Now, you've got multiple issues that you hear. You know you're going to have to get into this thing and sort of figure out on this volunteer job that you've taken on as a favor to this candidate. One of the things that pops up in the middle of all this, to just add to this, is that there's a bill collector out there who's calling around trying to get a Time Warner cable bill paid, correct?
I do recall that I learned of such a thing after my visit to the bank.
And it wasn't a horribly large amount, but it was still this. All this has just happened. Most importantly, and most terribly, the event involving Ms. Hahn and Mr. Hahn and Mr. Broyhill. But to top it all off, you got this, you got unanswered questions, you got money missing, and now you got some guy calling saying, "I got a bill that's got to be paid." I ask this because at this point, you didn't really have time yet to really even investigate and thoroughly examine what the financial condition of the campaign was. I mean, you didn't have time to go look into statements. You didn't have time to go see, are there other outstanding obligations? Are there other things that still need to be paid? The debt is still out there to Congressman Miller. All this stuff, these are all unanswered questions at that point, correct?
As of the time of my visit to the bank,
Yes.
there were a substantial number of unanswerable questions because the bank was not able to provide me with records at that time. I did not have access to the committee's records, whether it be the computer records or any manual checkbook. I, sir, did not have interaction at all with the Time Warner collector, although I learned of some collection activity at or about that time, at or after that time.
And again, Congressman Miller, I mean, it would be fair to say he's a friend.
Yes, sir.
He didn't know any of this stuff either.
I don't believe he did. No, he was as surprised as I was about the circumstances in the bank account, and shocked as I was about the events.
At some point, some thought has to be given to if there's this bill collector out there. And again, it goes back to the question of you're the candidate when you're the person in office, and you've sort of delegated all the responsibilities of this running the campaign account to other people. Here you are, two lawyers, and yes, you're attached, you're the treasurer, he's the candidate, but really it's like neither of you know any of this stuff going on. Not through negligence, that's the normal way it goes, but it's a shock. And you find yourself at a loss because you're not in a position to answer any of the questions yet, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know the extent of the damage yet, correct?
Correct.
And the damage could be, at that point, even more. Because you're familiar with Roe v. Thornburg?
I can't say that I am, no, sir.
All right, it's the federal case. A candidate's campaign committee, it's not, I mean, it can be set up as a not-for-profit corporation, but most of the time, some do, but most of the time it's not, correct?
Some are set up as corporate entities, and that's permitted by North Carolina law and by the Federal Election Campaign Act.
This one was not.
Many are not.
Right, many are not. And Congressman Miller's was not, correct?
Was not.
under that Roe v. Thornburg case, a candidate can be held personally liable for some of the liabilities of his campaign account, his or her campaign account. Does that sound accurate with the election law that you're familiar with? If it's not, just say you're not familiar.
I'm not familiar with that holding, and I would think it would be an exception to the usual rule that we work with, by which the committee's undertaking are the committee's. Circumstances might be different in the situation in which the candidate separately and expressly contracted for services individually. So I can't speak to the holding of that case. I can imagine circumstances in which such a holding as you have described could be reached, but in this case, when I examined circumstances at PNC Bank, there was a deficit in the account, and shortly thereafter I learned that there was an effort undertaken to collect an indebtedness claimed by Time Warner. I never had any contact or communications with Time Warner, however.
I understand that.
Mr. Arbor, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to recess for the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning. I'll ask that you recall the instructions. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about the case. Don't form or express opinions about the outcome. No media or independent investigation regarding these matters. I remind you that there is media coverage, so please use extreme caution around media outlets and have no conversations with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. You'll be sure to just leave all of the papers that you have there in your chairs. And tomorrow morning at 9:30, gather in the deliberation room. Thank you very much for your service. We'll see you in the morning. Everyone else, please remain seated. All right, sir, you may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see. You mentioned the matter of Charles Williford, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, I would alert the court. I know Mr. Wilford can be brought in right now. He is the next witness. He's under subpoena, and subpoena is good until March the 6th. He's expressed some concern about wanting or desiring to go to South Carolina, as I understand it.
All right, if you'd have him come in.
Okay. Yes, here's Mr. Wilford.
Yes, sir. If you'll come around, sir. If you'll come around this way, sir.
Your Honor, this is Mr. Williford of PRC. He will be the state's next witness after Mr. Wallace is done. He is under subpoena, and I wanted to alert the court that he has been here all day, as I understand it, but I think he's expressed a desire to go out of state tomorrow, and the state will need him as the second witness once this one hopefully concludes soon.
All right, Mr. Williford, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
You understand that you're under subpoena, which is a court order that requires you to appear in this courtroom between today's date and whenever that subpoena expires, which I understand is later on this week. So we are going to require your presence here in the court tomorrow. Do you have any concerns you want to bring to my attention?
Well, I guess you'll refund my money. It's going to cost me a great deal for this to happen.
Yes, sir.
May I ask you what time is he still talking now?